All right, so now we're going to do part B. Part B is MAP here stands for monoammonium phosphate, MKP, monopotassium phosphate, MgSO4, magnesium sulfate. And for a half gallon, which I'm doing, it's 57.5 grams, 150 grams, and 320 grams. So I've got my B part half filled, approximately half filled here. And this is all going to use the bigger scale. Although I can't do 57.5, but you know, 57, 58, close enough. So let's start with the monoammonium phosphate. I'll use this one. And I need 57.5 grams. So put my cup on there, turn the scale on, and just do what I did before. 44. Okay, there we go. So just right on 58. That's good. There we go, adding in. Kind of stuck a little bit in there. It's funny, some of these powders are kind of hydrophilic and they're more sticky. The others are more dry. Anyway, a little bit of tiny amount of cross-contamination isn't a big problem. But I think now it's kind of getting to the point where I should at least wipe this out, if not rinse it out. Monoammonium phosphate. Next we will do the monopotassium phosphate. For that, 150 grams. $120, $137, $146, $148, $150. By the way, this is my latest recipe. I do change it every few months, just a little bit. I mean, I'm getting it closer and closer to perfect. This one is based on some leaf tissue tests that I got in recently. And I just increased the calcium a little bit. And what else did I do? I think I lowered the magnesium a little bit. The micronutrient recipe I've had dialed in for a while. I'm really happy with it. Okay, so now 320 grams of magnesium sulfate. That looks good in there. Magnesium sulfate is everywhere and it's inexpensive and it's pretty consistent, and so I just get this at the drugstore. I'm sure some of my mentors who taught me fertilizer recipes would shudder at the thought, because who knows what the company could add in, but it's worked for me. So 320 is going for it here. There are clumps in there, and I always try to avoid getting the clumps because then they don't go through the funnel. So break up any clumps before you put them into your measuring cup. For 320, that's 270. Okay, that's 325. So just take it out. Okay, 320. All right, you have time to seal that bag. Just set it over here. Now we top up this. There's the fill line right here. Okay. Part B, shake it up. Magnesium sulfate can be a little bit slow to dissolve. There's so much of it. I've noticed that it settles a little bit even over time, so I always shake the B part, even when I'm you know, making the fertilizer for each mixture. I kind of reshake these because I can always see a little bit of stuff collecting at the bottom. Okay, so that's our finished B part. The C part has the most stuff in it. It also has the most careful measurements, all of which are done on this small scale. So I'll put the big scale away. And bring over all of my micros. So we have iron DTPA, zinc EDTA, manganese EDTA, copper EDTA, boric acid, and sodium molybdate, which gives you your molybdenum. So the iron by far is the most concentrated at 32 grams per gallon or 16 grams per half gallon. That's the thing that turns the micronutrient brown colored. And I'm going to do that one first. There we go. So I gotta use a different container for that. I'm gonna use this one. It's got a nice little pouring ledge on it. 16 grams is too much for one of these pieces of paper, but it's kind of too little for this. Yeah, because this cup is too heavy for this cup. Put that one on there. Zero it out. I have this little spoon, but it's got residue on it, as you could probably just see. So I'm going to get a new spoon and wash that later. Just use this one. So 16. There we go. Okay. And also, I always put the lids back on these right when I get this stuff out, because if they're hydrophilic at all, they'll start to cake up before you put the lid on. I'm especially in Hawaii, it's 80% humidity here today. So, gotta protect them. When I store them, I keep them in a cool, dry place. Let's see if I can. Let's see if I should do this. I'll do it like this. Kind of already caked up. All the others I can do with the little post-it notes because it's smaller amounts. Okay. Worked out pretty well. I'll leave my lid for this. Maybe over here. Not sure where my lid is for this, but I'll just do this for now. Okay, so next comes zinc at 1.7 grams for a half gallon. So I'm going to use one of these again. The zinc is actually the stickiest one, so it's hard to even get it off of this paper. It just kind of cakes on really fast. It's this one. 0.75. Cool. Okay. I have to go in there and kind of scrape it off because it sticks to the paper, so that's what I'm doing now. All right, perfect. So next I have to wipe this off again, get a new piece of paper. And we're manganese 2.5 grams for a half gallon. Always make sure you zero out the scale. The little pieces of paper might not be exactly the same as each other. Where is my manganese? Here it is. 2.5. 1.74. 2.3. Perfect. This one it came off really clean, so I'm going to use the same piece of paper for the next one, which is copper at 0.25. It's really light. There we go. Teeny tiny bit of copper. Boric acid, 2 grams, easy enough. What is that boric acid? There it is. Perfect. Okay. So now we're down to the most delicate one, the sodium molybdate. It only needs to be added at 0.02 grams per half gallon. So I have a different method of doing that because it's hard even on this scale to measure accurately at 0.02. So what I do is I do 10 times more, which is 0.2. And I put it in 100 milliliters of water, which I've already measured out, and then I use 10 milliliters of that water to add to here. So I'm going to measure out 0.2 instead of 0.02, 10 times more. That's 0.1. Okay, there we go. Actually, that's 0.23, so I'm going to take a little bit off of there. Okay. Now I'm adding it to 100 milliliters of water. So this total 100 milliliters contains 10 times more than I actually want in here. So I will take 10 milliliters out of here, 1/10 of it, using this syringe. Now I know I've got an accurate measurement of that. Turn that off. And the fill line on this one is a little bit tricky because the thing is not see-through, but I've actually got it already there. I went ahead, I think with the micros, I went ahead and filled it to the fill line because the micros take up so little space. in the actual container. So all I'm missing is the lid on this one. So that's pretty much the whole thing. If you're going to use it fast, you don't even need the benzoic acid. If you're going to let it sit around for a while, and especially if there's light shining through it, the addition rate on the benzoic acid is 0.4 grams per gallon or 0.2 grams per half gallon. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab that and just add 0.2 grams to each of my containers here. And then the other trick about benzoic acid is that it does best at pH 4.0, and I think you'll find if you measure the pHs of these that they're already kind of down in that range, but you can use phosphoric acid, just your standard pH down, to get them the rest of the way, because it's so little that it takes that the phosphorus and the phosphoric acid doesn't really affect the recipe significantly. If you want to be more painstaking, you could use nitric acid in the one that has the nitrogen, but it really doesn't matter that much. So I just use phosphoric acid in all of them. I'm going to measure out 0.2. Put it in the first one. For the second one. Okay. Got it. Don't have my pH meter out here, so I'm not going to do a demonstration of getting the pH to 4.0, but I'm sure that you know how to do that already. So that has to definitely be shaken in. It kind of sits on the top. Doesn't like to really dissolve very much. That one I don't have the lid. But anyway, that's the gist of it, and if you have any questions, let me know.